This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, I'm ready for this show today because this is different to our weekday shows. Obviously, the weekday is all about the news of the day. Today, we are trying to find out the biggest story of the week, the most remarkable story, the sleeper story, and our favourite story. It is a highly competitive environment. And which is actually a very genuine competition between us because you and I are both quite competitive people.
Oh, no, don't be like that. We're not competitive. I just like to win. So do you.
Yeah. And if you don't win, it just kind of, it stays with you.
Yes. We kind of talk about it for the next week until the next show.
That's right. Until there's an opportunity for redemption, which might be what I'm looking for today.
It could be.
All right. And of course, it seems like the perfect time to bring in our adjudicator, our Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang, who's always very impartial, if not sometimes a little bit wrong. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Michael. Good morning, Sean. And may I just say, I know that some of the scars of the losses remain a lot longer than 1 week.
Yes. He's fearless and he's greedless, Adam.
I like it.
I don't know that he's a good adjudicator, but he's both fearless and greedless.
Well, now that we've both had a crack at the adjudicator, it feels like it's a very level playing field now. Shall we jump into it?
Yes. How about you tell us your biggest story of the week? Because quite often you complain at the end of it saying you went first, you got a better run. So, Michael, what was the biggest story of the week for you?
Well, the biggest story, it wasn't just for me. This is the biggest story for the world, in fact, this week, Sean. And because it has been...
let's not oversell it. Go on.
I certainly won't. It has been a massive week for geopolitics. I'm actually talking global stage here. I'm a big picture guy. 7 months on since the start of the war in Ukraine, things aren't going so well for Russia now. And we've seen in the last few weeks, Ukrainian forces have had some big wins. And this week then, we saw Russian President Vladimir Putin announce a major escalation, the mobilization of 300,000 reserve troops and those with previous military experience. Perhaps most worryingly, I thought, was that he again threatened, it was a very thinly veiled threat, the use of Russia's nuclear weapons. And when you look at all the commentary about it, you get the sense that he's not backing down, even though he's getting a bit desperate now and he's accusing the West of trying to weaken, divide and destroy Russia. It probably doesn't help that China, previously a good supporter of Russia, has kind of started voicing some concerns over the conflict. And India, which is in a remarkably influential position, kind of sitting between the East and the West, has told Putin that the era of war is over. We had US President Joe Biden at the UN slamming Russia for, how about these quotes, attempting to erase a sovereign state from the map, saying the abuse against civilians should, quote, make your blood run cold. Obviously, the conflict has a significant impact on global markets, largely through the impact on energy prices. The price of oil spiked in the wake of the escalation. Financial markets, already on edge because of inflation and rising rates, don't need the added uncertainty of a nuclear-armed Russia threatening escalation of the conflict in Ukraine. That's why, for me, it was the biggest story of the week.
It's very unlike you to go so big.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah.
All right, well, look, I took a very objective approach to it this week and thought, what is the biggest story in the world right now, and one that kind of has an impact on business and finance right around the world, and it was unavoidably, inescapably this story.
Look, my biggest story was a property market, and to use a Michaelism, it's a story for the people. It's one that matters to every Australian. Now, the week started with a reasonable auction clearance rate for the last weekend, above 60%. From a low of 52% in July, the clearance rate is now back averaging in the low 60s. It just seems that supply and demand are kind of heading towards balance again, which is really good news in terms of house prices. We're not there yet, but it is good news. We also had Reserve Bank Governor Philip Lowe saying that although the bank doesn't predict house prices, he thought a drop of 10% sounds about right. And then the Financial Review held its property summit. Pretty amazing predictions out of that. Now, we had forecasts of property price drops from 25% from Barrenjoey's Joe Masters through to the more sanguine kind of 5 to 10%. Away from the residential market, we had Charter Hall CEO David Harrison, whose company, of course, owns plenty of office space, saying activity-based working is dead. And office densities would increase again, so you're going to have all these people back in the office, back to pre-pandemic levels. That's what he reckons. He said workers need to decide if they want a career or a job, adding that if people kept working from home, they'd increasingly find their roles replaced by robots. But Stockland CEO Tarun Gupta said flexible working is here to stay, the exact opposite, and that will cut demand for office space. We also had the boss of Vicinity Centres, Grant Kelly, saying the resurgence in large-scale shopping centres is being underpinned by a boom in luxury shopping. Put all that together, we had lots on the residential market, we had lots on the commercial market, we had lots on the retail market. So much going on in property, Michael, and it's a story for the people. Hence, the biggest story of the week. Over to you, Adamski.
Before that, I'm just going to voice a quick objection.
All right.
that you accused me of using a story that was outdated, and yet you used a story that you said supply and demand are falling back into balance. It hasn't happened yet, but it might be heading that way. This is a story that hasn't even happened.
I sense this is where I'm to play my role.
I think so, Adam. I think stand between us, would you?
Call it a hunch. Yeah. Michael, global concerns and the Russian invasion of Ukraine going on for 7 months, it has impacted supply chains around the world. And indeed, that impact has flowed on to interest rates throughout the world as people are balancing supply and demand. And Sean, your story on property, the hip pockets of homeowners and property owners, it's very big impact. I think, though, because the geopolitics has had impact on the interest rates, Michael just wins this one.
Thank you, Adam. I've never questioned your wisdom.
Yet today.
I think this is the last time I'm going to try and do a Michaelism. It just doesn't work.
Be true to yourself, Sean.
I should have learned that ages ago.
But Sean, it never works for me either.
Yeah, I know. I should have picked it up.
Yeah. Whenever I try it, it falls pretty. I've got a couple of Michaelisms coming up later on, and it does not bode well for me. All right, let's move on to most remarkable story of the week. You go first on this one, Sean.
Okay, it's just how well the coal companies are going. Yep, we know coal prices, particularly thermal coal, are going through the roof, and we know things are going well. But this week, it just became a bit ridiculous. First, New Hope Coal announced a profit of nearly $1 billion, 12 times the earnings of the previous financial year. And Chief Executive Rob Bishop says thermal coal prices are likely to rise before falling, so things could even be better this financial year. Whew, that is ridiculous. New Hope share price jumped more than 7%. It's up more than 150% this year. Quite amazing. Then this week, Whitehaven Coal said it wants to buy back about 25% of the company, worth about $2 billion. Capital management is a dark art, that's what I'd say. But Whitehaven's board and management could have given the money back to shareholders via a big dividend, or they could buy back shares, meaning the value of every share left on the market should rise significantly. Now, buybacks aren't unusual, but I don't think I've heard of a company buying back 1/4 of the stock. And of course, Whitehaven can do it simply because it's making so much money. Just remarkable this week what's going on in coal companies. How do I sell that? Good. Yeah.
Remarkable. Yeah, nicely said. Well put.
Thanks. What about you?
Well, aren't we being nice now?
Yeah,
My most remarkable story this week is the fact that in the last few days, we saw a perfect illustration of the jobs crisis in Australia. We know, obviously, unemployment's at 3.5%. It's pretty much a 1-for-1 ratio of jobs for job seekers at the moment. But still, it is so incredibly tough out there for businesses to find staff. Look at Dan Murphy's. They held an employment blitz, and this week we found out just how it actually went. For a week, if you walked into a Dan Murphy's store and said you were looking for a job, you had an instant on-the-spot interview with a manager. They're coming up to Christmas. They needed to fill about 2,200 vacancies. It has never been easier to get a job at Dan's, and they filled less than half the roles. They still need another 1,200 people even after that employment blitz. How about this? They'll even pay for your responsible service of alcohol training, your certification, so you could actually just go do it and then leave and go and work at a pub if you wanted.
No. Maybe you would do that, but most of us wouldn't do that. But go on.
You get staff discounts on pub meals right across the Endeavour Group. You get discounts on groceries. And of course, you get cheaper beer and wine. Even with all that on offer, they still can't get enough people. You will not find a better illustration this week of the state of the labour market in Australia. Remarkable. Adam.
True, Michael, remarkable. However, not as remarkable as Sean's story. Coal prices and their performances, they're some of the most stunning profits in those companies' histories. In fact, they're probably the most stunning profits in any company's history. So, Sean, you win this one. Michael, it was a very good story and very well told, but I'm sorry, Sean gets the win.
That's fine. Oh, well done, Sean. That's
Nani.
Oh, see.
Oh, sorry. I probably shouldn't have done that.
You know what? Let's take a moment. Let's just regroup. We'll come back in a moment with the sleeper story of the week. All right, Sean, we are looking now for the sleeper story of the week. So maybe one that's not getting the attention that it deserves or is going to become a bigger story further down the track. I'll go first if I can on this one because I've picked a sleeper story that I think is going to sneak up on people, right? And that's why it's a sleeper. In just a few days, the reduction in the fuel excise will end. It was introduced by the previous coalition government 6 months ago to help with the cost of living, halving the fuel excise, taking petrol prices down by about 22 cents per litre. That ends on Wednesday night. And this week we heard from the government confirming that it won't be extended. Fuel is about kind of 50 cents a litre cheaper than the peak in July, and the government wants to focus on budget repair. So really kind of no surprises there that they're not extending it. They never had said that they would. So what does it mean? It means that fuel is probably going to rise. The cost of fuel is going to rise, not straight away because all the petrol and everything that's in the underground tanks at the servos at the moment was purchased at the cheaper price, and the ACCC is going to be keeping a very close watch on it to make sure that it doesn't skyrocket. But, Sean, as I am a man of the people, this is pretty much just a public service announcement to be aware that it is ending in a few days. I reckon a lot of people will have missed the memo that it's going to come to an end. So fill up the car, fill up the boat, fill up the mower, fill up your watering can, get some ice cream containers and fill those up while petrol is cheap. Obviously, don't panic buy. And it sounds like a little bit like I might be contradicting myself there. But do it while you can. Even if I don't win, Sean, even if I don't win Adam, this is just a community service. I'm doing this for my people.
God, you're a nice bloke.
I am. I'm selfless. I give till it hurts.
Do you know what I'm a bit dirty on, though? Because Jim Chalmers came out and said, petrol companies and petrol stations shouldn't be increasing the 22.5 cents a litre on Wednesday night. He expects that there's probably fuel in those underground tanks. So, don't expect it to go up on Wednesday night. In my place, around my area, it's already gone up. So,
that's a clever way around it. Put it up in advance so it doesn't look like it's in response to it.
Yeah.
Sean, anyway. Conspiracy theory Aylmer.
Yeah. My sleeper of the story, perhaps it should actually be the biggest story of the week. It's just that it's not there yet. So next week it might be the biggest story of the week. But at the moment, I'm calling it a sleeper story. It's the number 2 telco, Optus, revealed it had been a victim of a massive cyber attack, possibly the biggest cyber attack, or at least the most influential cyber attack ever on an Australian company. Potentially 10 million customers' information, including their names, date of birth, addresses, phone numbers and ID documents, such as passports and driver's licenses, have been stolen. Optus said it had shut down the attack and is working with the Australian Cyber Security Centre, the AFP, and regulators. Now, Optus said payment details and account passwords have not been compromised, and telco services, including mobile and home internet, have not been affected. That was Thursday. Then on Friday, Optus said it had turned off SIM card swaps and replacements, as well as account change of ownership systems. So this is a deep attack. This is a massive attack, which, for the record, is a band which Adam loves. Anyway, this is a massive attack. Optus, clearly it's early days, and CEO Kelly Bayer Rosmarin tried to reassure customers, and yesterday said investigations were ongoing, but there's all sorts of questions. The timing. So the first report of this occurred in The Australian, and then Optus came out with a release very soon afterwards. They've defended that, saying, yep, we found out on Wednesday night, but it just took us time to get everything in order before we could tell the rest of the world. There's no ransomware being demanded as yet, at least. So Optus doesn't know whether this is a criminal attack, whether it's state-sponsored, exactly why it's occurred, and that still has to be cleared up. Essentially, anyone who has ever used an Optus products now needs to be on the lookout. As I said, this probably could be the biggest story of the week. It's just not quite there yet. We don't have all the details yet to put it there. Therefore, it's in the sleeper category, but a really incredible, remarkable story, a sleeper story, potentially the biggest story. There you go, Adam. What do you reckon?
This is difficult. I can't split this one. It's a draw, and it'll have to come down to the points for the whole show. So the public service announcement made by our friend, our colleague, The Difference, Michael Thompson. Your public service announcement, Michael, was well written and well sold. So well done.
Thank you.
The Optus cyber attack is massive, and it's, I think, to the point of the sleeper story, it's unfolding and will have some way yet to go. Optus won't be alone in this, but it's probably the biggest one we've seen yet. So excellent story by Sean, Conspiracy Theory Aylmer, versus Michael, The Difference, Thompson. I can't split it.
So the only thing I would say, it's not a conspiracy theory. So I accept the verdict. I totally accept the verdict. That's fair. But this Optus thing, like if you're an Optus customer or have been, this is real for you. So my community service announcement on this one, don't think it's a conspiracy theory because it's actually happened. And just be on alert. If you get emails that you think are a bit odd, if you get phone calls that are a bit odd, err on the side of caution. People have your information. This is a crisis. Anyway, we are 1.5 all. Moving on to our favourite stories.
You go first for the favourite story, Sean. I feel like you need a bit of a boost. Sorry, didn't mean that to come across so harsh, but please go ahead.
My favourite story of the week, well, it's about the gaming world, isn't it? There's not many bigger things in the gaming world than GTA, Grand Theft Auto. A hacker this week published pre-release footage of GTA 6. The cache of videos includes an extensive and unauthorised look at the making of GTA, which is one of the potentially the biggest game ever in the history of gaming. It hasn't been updated, Grand Theft Auto, for almost 10 years, and the updates have been in the pipeline since 2013 or since 2014. Now they've been leaked. Incredible story, right? Just the fact that Grand Theft Auto is such a massive, massive game, the fact that it's leaked. It wasn't though, Michael, until you said, I wonder whether that was planned to get a bit of excitement up about it. That hadn't occurred to me. Now, obviously, in this episode today, we've found out that you're trying to cheat petrol companies and you're kind of a cynical sort of person, and the whole thing about GTA deliberately doing it sort of fits into your genre. But that just hadn't occurred to me. Anyway, I think Grand Theft Auto is fantastic. So it's my favourite story of the week.
Adam, don't you think there's something kind of unnatural about Sean talking about Grand Theft Auto? It's like me talking about bond markets. It's just like, I theoretically, I know what I'm saying, but it's just something doesn't quite feel right. Anyway.
GTA, mate. Don't call it Grand Theft Auto. GTA.
Well done. Maybe you are, in fact, a fan. Look,
a very quick story. I used to work in New York. I was fortunate, and we had an office in Soho, and the Grand Theft Auto main office was like 4 doors down. And every time they had an update, this is many years ago, or when they were developing something, it was often quite controversial because around race particularly. And you would have these massive demonstrations outside the Grand Theft Auto shop in New York about the latest update, which, had said something about some country that they didn't like. I just always found it very entertaining. Maybe that's why I like it as opposed to the game itself.
I think that little bit of extra colour might have just helped you out a little bit.
I hope it didn't hinder, hopefully.
Okay, look, my favourite story of the week, and Adam, I'm sure you suspected that this was coming. It's a special favourite for me was the coverage of the funeral for Queen Elizabeth II on Monday night. I watched the service, I watched the procession afterwards, and just thought, wow, it was a remarkable send-off for someone who devoted their entire life to service. Regardless of where you stand on the monarchy and the Republic debate, I thought it was a pretty incredible sight. The gun carriage carrying the coffin being marched through the streets of London, and just the sheer number of people who turned out to pay their respects. And there was kind of all kind of numbers thrown around, and the 4 billion figure for the number of people watching worldwide on TV. In Australia, there was apparently a peak of just over 5 million viewers at 8 p.m. on Monday evening. And then obviously on Thursday, we had a public holiday, a day of mourning, which had a mixed reaction from business because of the impact on trading and the cost of public holiday rates and all that. Now, after what's been a pretty extraordinary kind of couple of weeks, life does kind of get back to normal. Life goes on. But I think it was an incredible spectacle, the service on Monday night. And that was my favourite story of the week.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So, Sean, you, in the previous story, protested the label of conspiracy theorist, then went into Grand Theft Auto and became one
And
again.
embraced it.
Good point.
And Sean...
Don't call me consistent, Adam, please.
yeah,
Nothing about this podcast is ever consistent. I think we can safely accept that.
and that cues me. Michael, you win this one. The reason, the scale and the detail involved with the whole ceremony and how it was covered was remarkable. And then my favourite bit was when, in amongst the service, which was so sombre and beautiful, one of the clergy starts ruffling with his papers, and one little slip of paper just starts wafting in the air backwards and forwards behind the coffin. It was like the whole thing was so immaculate.
Yeah.
And in the next scene, they pan away and that piece of paper is gone.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Someone had the role of cleaning that up. So, Michael, you win on this one. And so, obviously, you split on the story wins. But on the points count...
No. Michael won 2.5 to 1.5 because Optus didn't get a win.
But look, I think we all want to know the points anyway.
Oh, we do.
90 points to Michael. Very high score. 85 points to Sean.
There you go.
It's a drubbing. Look, there we go. I think enough said. It feels like this episode is getting longer and longer each week, because it feels like we are doing more and more to try and curry favour with the judge and then abuse him if we disagree with his decision. So it's very well-rounded podcast. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
And thank you, Adam, and congratulations on some great work.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Sean.
Make sure you're following the podcast and join us online on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson. Have a great weekend.